In 1977, Teresita Basa, who was an immigrant from the Philippines, was found murdered in her Chicago apartment. And then, her ghost tipped detectives off to her killer's identity. The brutal murder of Teresita Basa remained unsolved for years. Chicago area police were baffled by the crime that seemed to have no motive, no leads, and no chance of being solved. But 5 months after her murder, an unlikely ally came forward, claiming to have information about the young Filipina immigrant's death. Their information proved correct and valuable. Alan Showery, a co-worker of Basa's, was ultimately tried and convicted for the crime. The murder of Teresita Basa seemed unremarkable on the surface but was no less tragic for her friends and family. But what made this story remarkable was how Basa's husband, and the family friend, came to find out about Showery's guilt. Born in 1929 in the Philippines, Teresita Basa came to the United States in the 1960s in the hopes of earning a better life. Although she came to the United States primarily to study music, she eventually specialized in respiratory therapy at Edgewater Hospital. The facility, which was located just outside of Chicago, Illinois, once boasted Frank Sinatra as a patient, as well as being the birthplace of serial killers John Wayne Gacy and Hillary Rodham Clinton. Teresita's friend Ruth Loeb called her on February 21, 1977, and the two talked for about 30 minutes. Loeb would later testify that Teresita was expecting a friend to come over, but she didn't give any further details about who he was or the purpose of his visit. In the hour following Loeb's last phone call to Teresita, her neighbors began complaining about the smell of smoke emanating from Teresita's apartment. She was found naked and buried under a mattress with a knife protruding from her chest by firefighters. Investigators ultimately determined that despite initial appearances, Teresita wasn't the victim of a sexual assault, and there was no physical evidence to lead police to her potential murderer. The police did not have any leads or clues regarding Teresita Basa's murder during the first 5 months after she was dead. However, 6 months after she was murdered, the Washington Post reported that Dr. Jose C. Chua Jr., who was a co-worker of Basa's, claimed his wife, Remy Bias, was having visions about Teresita's murder. Doctor claimed that his wife would speak to him in a trance saying that she needs his help to punish the person who murdered her and was roaming free. When he pressed his entranced wife further about her identity, he was shocked and afraid as she revealed her identity as "I am Teresita Basa." But she apparently told him he had nothing to be scared of and she was really pleading with him to help solve her murder. Based on the book Teresita, A Voice from the Grave, Basa's ghost pointed the finger at Alan Showery, a respiratory therapist who was also Teresita's co-worker. And although Showery initially tried to get the case against him thrown out because all the evidence came from the world beyond, police testified that Showery complied quietly with investigators when he first was suspected in the murder, almost as a tacit acknowledgement of his guilt. After an initial mistrial, Showery ultimately decided to plead guilty to the crime on February 23, 1979, and was sentenced to 14 years in prison for his crime. It seems likely that he returned to New York City shortly after he was released from prison on parole in 1983.